What happens when one of the most famous women in the world walks onto a live television set thinking she can say whatever she wants without consequences? In just 38 seconds, a single comment would turn a routine interview into an explosive confrontation that ended with security escorting a guest off the stage. This is the story of how Meghan Markle got kicked off Piers Morgan's show. The studio lights were hot that morning. Piers Morgan sat behind his desk, coffee in hand, ready for what he thought would be a standard interview. His producers had booked Meghan Markle to discuss her new projects and life after royalty. It seemed straightforward enough, but from the moment she walked onto that set, something felt off. Meghan entered wearing an all-white suit, her hair perfectly styled, her expression already defensive. She didn't smile when she shook Piers' hand. She didn't make small talk during the commercial break. She just sat down, crossed her legs, and stared at him like she was ready for battle. "Welcome to the show," Piers said warmly, trying to break the ice. "Thanks for being here." "Thanks for having me," Meghan replied, her voice flat and cold. Piers dove into the interview with a simple question. "So, you've been quite busy lately. Tell us what you've been working on." Meghan leaned back in her chair. "Well, Piers, I've been working on projects that actually matter, things that help people, unlike some television hosts who just sit around and criticize others all day." The studio went quiet. The crew members exchanged glances. Piers blinked, caught off guard by the immediate hostility. "I'm sorry," Piers said, keeping his composure. "I was just asking about your work." "And I'm telling you," Meghan continued, her voice dripping with condescension, "I'm doing real work. Important work. Not just gossip and tabloid nonsense." Piers smiled, refusing to take the bait. "Well, I'd love to hear about it. What exactly are these projects?" Meghan waved her hand dismissively. "I don't think your audience would understand. They're probably not sophisticated enough to grasp what I'm trying to accomplish." Now the tension in the room was thick. The producers in the control room were frantically discussing whether to cut to commercial. But Piers, ever the professional, pressed on. "I think you'd be surprised," Piers said calmly. "Our viewers are actually quite intelligent. But let's move on. How are you finding life outside the royal family?" Meghan's eyes narrowed. "You mean, how am I enjoying my freedom from that prison? From all those outdated traditions and stuffy rules?" "I wouldn't call the royal family a prison," Piers countered gently. "Many people see it as an honor." "Of course you would say that," Meghan shot back. "You worship the monarchy. You can't see how oppressive and backwards it all is." Piers took a deep breath. "I respect the institution, yes. But I'm curious about your experience. You chose to join. That family. You knew what you were getting into." "Did I?" Meghan's voice rose sharply. "Did I really know I'd be treated like a prisoner? Did I know I'd be silenced and controlled at every turn?" "With respect," Piers said, his patience beginning to thin, "you had quite a voice. You gave interviews. You made speeches. You had a global platform." "A platform they controlled," Meghan snapped. "Everything I said had to be approved. Everything I wore was scrutinized. I couldn't even pick out my own clothes without permission." "That's part of being a royal," Piers explained. "There are protocols. It's been that way for centuries." Meghan laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Protocols. What a fancy word for control. For abuse." "Abuse is a very strong word," Piers said firmly, "and I think it's important we're careful about using it. Many people suffer real abuse. Are you saying the royal family abused you?" "I'm saying they made my life hell," Meghan declared. "And people like you defended them every step of the way. You attacked me in the press. You questioned everything I did." "I questioned some of your decisions, yes," Piers admitted. "That's what journalists do. We ask questions. We hold public figures accountable." "Accountable?" Meghan's voice was venomous now. "You tore me apart. You called me a liar. You said horrible things about me on this very show." "I said I didn't believe some of your claims," Piers corrected. "That's not the same as calling you a liar. And I'm entitled to my opinion, just as you're entitled to yours." Your opinion is worthless, Meghan spat. You're a failed journalist who makes money by attacking women, specifically by attacking me. The crew gasped. One of the cameramen nearly dropped his equipment. Piers sat up straighter, his jaw tight. That's completely unfair, he said, his voice hardening. I've interviewed thousands of people over my career, men and women, and I ask everyone tough questions. That's my job. Your job is to bully people, Meghan said, to make yourself feel important by tearing others down. You're obsessed with me, Piers. It's honestly quite pathetic. I'm not obsessed with anyone, Piers replied firmly. But when someone makes serious allegations about the royal family, allegations that affect the monarchy and the country, yes, I'm going to question them. That's not obsession. That's journalism. Meghan rolled her eyes dramatically. You wouldn't know real journalism if it hit you in the face. You're a tabloid hack who got lucky enough to land a morning show. But everyone sees through you. Everyone knows you're a fraud. Meghan, Piers said, his voice now ice cold, I've been very patient with you. I've given you a platform to speak, but I won't sit here and be insulted on my own show. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you spent years insulting me on air, Meghan fired back. Maybe you should have considered the consequences of your actions. The consequences? Piers leaned forward. What consequences are you talking about? The fact that nobody respects you, Meghan said smugly. The fact that you're a joke. The fact that your career is basically over, and everyone's just waiting for you to retire, so someone competent can take your place. The control room was in chaos. The producers were shouting into Piers' earpiece, but he pulled it out. He wasn't going to let this slide anymore. You came on this show as a guest, Piers said, his voice steady but filled with authority. I welcomed you here. I gave you respect, and you've done nothing but attack me personally from the moment you sat down. Because you deserve it, Meghan said simply. You've made a career out of attacking me. Now you're getting a taste of your own medicine. How does it feel, Piers? It feels like I'm talking to someone who can't handle criticism, Piers replied. Someone who thinks they're above scrutiny because of who they married. But here's the truth, Meghan. You're a public figure. You put yourself out there. And when you make claims that affect millions of people, you're going to be questioned. That's how it works. I don't answer to you, Meghan said coldly. I don't answer to anyone. Clearly, Piers said. But that's not how the real world works. We all answer to someone. We all have to explain ourselves when we make serious allegations. I've explained myself plenty, Meghan insisted. The problem is, people like you refuse to listen. You refuse to believe women. You refuse to accept that maybe, just maybe, I'm telling the truth. I listen to everyone, Piers countered, but I also look at evidence. I look at facts. And when things don't add up, I ask questions. That's not refusing to believe women. That's being a responsible journalist. Meghan laughed again, that same bitter, mocking sound. Responsible? You? That's the funniest thing I've heard all day. I think we're done here, Piers said suddenly. This interview is over. What? Meghan looked shocked. You can't just end the interview. I absolutely can, Piers said. This is my show, and I'm not going to sit here and be verbally abused by someone who clearly has no interest in having an actual conversation. I'm having a conversation, Meghan protested. You just don't like what I'm saying. No, Piers corrected. You're not having a conversation. You're launching personal attacks. There's a difference. Meghan stood up abruptly. Fine. I don't want to be here anyway. This show is beneath me. Then why did you agree to come? Piers asked pointedly. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd grown up, Meghan said. I thought maybe you'd be professional. But I was wrong. You're still the same petty, insecure little man you've always been. And you're still someone who can't take responsibility for your own choices, Piers shot back. You blame everyone else for your problems. The royal family, the press, me, everyone. But yourself! How dare you? Meghan's voice shook with rage. You have no idea what I've been through. No idea what it's like to be in my position. You're right, Piers agreed. I don't know what it's like to be you, but I do know what it's like to face criticism and handle it with grace. Something you clearly haven't learned. Meghan grabbed her purse. I'm leaving. Good, Piers said. The door's right there. But Meghan didn't move toward the door. Instead, she turned back to Piers, her face red with anger. You know what your problem is, Piers. You're irrelevant. Nobody cares what you think anymore. This show is dying. Your career is dying, and you're desperately clinging to whatever controversy you can find to stay relevant. My show has millions of viewers, Piers replied calmly. But if it makes you feel better to think that, go ahead. Millions of viewers who are watching you make a fool of yourself every single day, Meghan continued. They tune in to laugh at you, not with you. You're a punchline. Are you finished? Piers asked. Not even close, Meghan said. I could go on for hours about everything that's wrong with you and this pathetic excuse for a show. But you won't, Piers said, standing up now. Because you're leaving. We're done here. You're kicking me off? Meghan asked incredulously. Yes, Piers said firmly. I am. This interview is over. You've been nothing but hostile and disrespectful from the moment you arrived, and I'm not giving you a platform to continue. You can't do this, Meghan said, her voice rising to a shout. I came here in good faith. Good faith? Piers repeated, astonished. You've spent the last 15 minutes insulting me, insulting this show, insulting our viewers. That's not good faith. That's an attack. I'm just speaking my truth, Meghan insisted. No, Piers said. You're being rude and unprofessional, and I won't tolerate it. Not on my show. Meghan's face twisted with fury. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is how you silence women. This is how you maintain your power, by throwing us out when we dare to speak up. I've interviewed hundreds of women on this show, Piers said, his voice rising. Strong, intelligent, accomplished women who managed to disagree with me without resorting to personal insults. You're not being silenced. You're being held to the same standard as everyone else. Your standards are a joke, Meghan yelled, just like you. Security, Piers called out. Please escort our guest out of the studio. 2 security guards appeared from the wings. They approached Meghan cautiously, unsure how to handle the situation. Don't you touch me, Meghan warned them. I'll leave on my own. Then please do, Piers said, sitting back down at his desk. The exit is that way. Meghan grabbed her things and stormed toward the door, but she couldn't resist one final parting shot. You'll regret this, Piers, she called out. Everyone will see what you did here today. Everyone will know how you treated me. I treated you with respect until you made that impossible, Piers responded. The cameras caught everything. People can judge for themselves. They will judge you, Meghan promised, and you'll lose. You always lose. Goodbye, Meghan, Piers said firmly. Have a nice day. Meghan let out a frustrated scream and threw her purse against the wall. The crew jumped back, shocked by the outburst. The security guards moved closer, ready to intervene if necessary. You're all witnesses, Meghan shouted to the crew. You all saw how he treated me, how he silenced me and kicked me out for daring to tell the truth. No one responded. The crew members just stared, uncomfortable and unsure what to say. Of course, Meghan said bitterly. You're all on his side. You all protect him because he signs your paychecks. You're all complicit in his abuse. Nobody's abusing anyone, one of the producers said quietly. We just think maybe it's best if you go. Best for who? Meghan demanded. Best for Piers? Best for this show? What about what's best for me? What's best for you, Piers interjected, is to leave before you embarrass yourself any further. Embarrass myself? Meghan whirled around to face him. You're the embarrassment. You and your smug face and your arrogant attitude. You think you're so important, but you're nothing. Nothing. Security now, Piers said, his patience finally exhausted. The guards stepped forward and gently took Meghan by the arms. She tried to shake them off, but they held firm. "Get your hands off me," Meghan shrieked. "I said don't touch me." "Ma'am, you need to leave," one of the guards said politely but firmly. "Please come with us." Meghan struggled against them for a moment, but she quickly realized it was futile. She stopped fighting and allowed herself to be led toward the exit, but she kept shouting the entire way. "This isn't over, Piers. Do you hear me? This isn't over. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. Everyone." "I'm sure you will," Piers called after her. "You're very good at playing the victim." "I am a victim," Meghan screamed. "A victim of your cruelty and your hatred." "You're a victim of your own behavior," Piers corrected. "That's all." The security guards finally managed to get Meghan to the door. She made one last attempt to pull free, but they held tight and guided her through it. Her voice could still be heard echoing down the hallway as they led her away from the studio. "You haven't heard the last of me. I'll ruin you. I'll destroy your career. You'll be sorry you ever crossed me." The door slammed shut, and suddenly the studio was silent. The crew stood frozen, processing what they'd just witnessed. Piers sat at his desk, taking a long drink of his coffee. "Well," he said finally, breaking the silence, "that was interesting." A nervous laugh rippled through the crew. The tension began to ease slightly. "Are we still rolling?" Piers asked the director. "Yes, we're still live," the director confirmed. Piers turned to face the camera directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for what you just witnessed. I invited Meghan Markle on this show, hoping to have a civil conversation about her life and her work. Instead, she chose to launch a series of personal attacks. I gave her every opportunity to engage respectfully, but she refused. I don't take pleasure in ending an interview early or having a guest removed from the studio, but I have a responsibility to maintain a certain standard on this show, and that includes not allowing anyone, no matter how famous, to turn this platform into a venue for abuse." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I've always believed in free speech," Piers continued. "I've always believed people should be able to express their opinions, even when I disagree with them. But free speech isn't a license to be cruel or to hurl insults at someone simply because they've questioned you in the past. I've asked tough questions of Meghan, yes, but I've asked tough questions of everyone who sits in that chair. That's my job, and I won't apologize for doing it." Piers straightened his papers on the desk. "Now, we were supposed to spend the next 20 minutes of the show with our guest, but as you can see, that's no longer possible. So instead, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the rest of our scheduled programming. Thank you for your patience and understanding." He held his professional smile until the director called, "Clear." The moment they cut to commercial, the studio erupted in conversation. Everyone was talking at once, replaying what had just happened, trying to make sense of the chaos. "Did that really just happen?" one of the cameramen asked. "I can't believe she threw her purse," a producer said, shaking her head. "I've never seen anything like that," another crew member added. "That was absolutely wild." Piers remained at his desk, reviewing his notes for the next segment. He seemed remarkably calm considering what had just transpired. "Are you okay?" his co-host asked, walking over to check on him. "I'm fine," Piers assured her. "Just another day in television, right?" "That was hardly a normal day," she replied. "She really went after you." "She did," Piers agreed. "But I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I know I conducted myself professionally. I know I gave her every chance to have a real conversation. She chose not to take it." "Do you think there will be fallback?" the co-host asked worriedly. Piers shrugged. "Probably. There always is. But the cameras don't lie. People saw what happened. They can make up their own minds." In the control room, the producers were having a heated discussion about whether to address the incident further on air or simply move on. "We have to talk about it," one argued. "We can't just pretend it didn't happen." "But what more is there to say?" another countered. Piers already explained it. let's just continue with the show. They ultimately decided to let Piers handle it, however he felt appropriate when they came back from commercial. Meanwhile, out in the hallway, Meghan was still arguing with the security guards. "I want to go back in there," she insisted. "I'm not done." "Ma'am, you need to leave the building," one of the guards said firmly. "You've been asked to leave." "This is ridiculous," Meghan fumed. "I'm being censored. I'm being silenced." "You weren't silenced," the other guard said. "You said plenty, but you have to leave now." Meghan finally seemed to accept that she wasn't going to be allowed back into the studio. She pulled out her phone and began typing furiously, no doubt preparing to share her version of events on social media. Back in the studio, the commercial break was ending. Piers took a deep breath and prepared to continue the show. "Welcome back," he said when they went live again. "I know we just had quite a dramatic moment on the show, and I want to address it briefly before we move on. What you witnessed was a guest who came onto this show not to have a conversation, but to launch attacks. I've been in this business a long time, and I've learned that sometimes the most professional thing you can do is end an interview when it becomes clear the other person isn't interested in actual dialogue. That's what happened today." He looked directly into the camera. "I don't take pleasure in it. I wish things had gone differently. But I also won't allow anyone to turn this show into a platform for personal vendettas and insults. We set a high standard here, and I'm committed to maintaining it." Piers shuffled his papers. "Now, let's move on to the rest of our show. We have some great guests coming up and some important stories to discuss. But before we do that, I want to open up the phone lines. I know many of you watching at home probably have thoughts about what just happened. We'd love to hear from you." The phones immediately lit up. Producers began screening calls, and within minutes, they had several viewers ready to share their opinions on air. "We have Sarah from Manchester on the line," Piers said. "Sarah, what did you make of all that?" "Hi, Piers," Sarah's voice came through clearly. "I just want to say I think you handled that beautifully. She was completely out of line, and you gave her so many chances to have a proper conversation. You did the right thing by ending it." "Thank you, Sarah," Piers said. "I appreciate that. Let's go to James in Birmingham." "James?" "Yeah, hi," James said. "Look, I'm not always your biggest fan, Piers, but you were absolutely right to kick her off. She came on your show as a guest and then just attacked you personally. That's not okay. I don't care who you are." "I appreciate your honesty, James," Piers replied, "even about not always being my biggest fan. That's fair. Let's take one more call. We have Patricia from London." "Hello, Piers," Patricia said. "I've been watching your show for years, and I've never seen anything quite like that. She seemed to come on with an agenda, didn't she? Like she wanted to pick a fight." "It certainly felt that way," Piers admitted. "But I want to be clear. I don't think she planned to get kicked off. I think she genuinely believed she could say whatever she wanted without consequences. And when I pushed back, when I held her to the same standard I hold everyone, she couldn't handle it." The calls continued for several more minutes, with most viewers supporting Piers' decision to end the interview. There were a few who thought he should have let her continue speaking, but they were in the minority. "Thank you to everyone who called in," Piers said eventually. "Your support means a lot. Now, let's get back to the rest of our show. We have a lot more to cover today." And with that, the show continued. Piers interviewed other guests, discussed the news of the day, and carried on as if nothing unusual had happened. He was a professional, after all. This wasn't his first controversial interview, and it wouldn't be his last. But everyone who had been in that studio that day knew they'd witnessed something extraordinary. They'd seen a guest completely lose control, attacking the host with increasing venom until she had to be physically removed from the building. They'd seen Piers maintain his composure, even as he was being insulted and berated. They'd seen what happens when someone used to getting their way encounters someone who refuses to back down. As the show wrapped up and the crew began packing up for the day, they were still talking about the incident. It would be the topic of conversation in every break room and bar that evening. The footage would be replayed endlessly on social media and other news outlets. Everyone would have an opinion about who was right and who was wrong. But in that studio, in that moment, there was no ambiguity. Meghan had come on to Piers' show and behaved in a way that no guest should behave. She had hurled personal insults, made wild accusations, and refused to engage in civil discourse. And Piers had done exactly what any host should do in that situation. He had given her chances to course correct, and when she refused, he ended the interview and had her removed. It was as simple as that. The sun was setting outside the studio windows as the last crew members filed out. Piers packed up his things, ready to head home and put the strange day behind him. His phone was already buzzing with messages and calls from colleagues and friends who had seen what happened. He ignored most of them. He'd address everything in due time. For now, he just wanted to go home, have a glass of wine, and relax. Tomorrow was another day, another show, another opportunity to do what he did best: ask questions, challenge assumptions, and hold people accountable. Because that's what journalists do. That's what he'd always done. And he wasn't going to stop just because one entitled guest couldn't handle being treated like everyone else. The studio lights dimmed. The cameras were turned off. The show was over. But the controversy was just beginning.